Now we'll look briefly at a few things you need to keep in mind as a designer. After you've selected your sheaves and your belts, now what about how do you help them install these things and maintain these things? Well, think about the possible combinations one has, a manufacturer has, or the supplier has. You have all different shaft diameters. You got different horsepowers of electric motors. You got fans, you got blowers, you got chopper equipment, you got all kinds of shafts. So there's many, many diameters. Then you have, what did we have? 8 different possible belt sections, A, B, C, 3V, 5V, 8V. And we have a whole range of possible sheave diameters, as we saw in our charts. And we have the possibility of 1 groove, 2 grooves, 5 grooves, 10 grooves. If you multiply all those possible sizes together, you will come up with an enormous number of possible combinations. And there is no way that a supplier could stock all the possible combinations that a customer might want. Nor is there a way that you and your manufacturing company could stock them. So, what do? The suppliers make the sheaves in a few stock bore sizes. The bore is the hole going through the middle here. And then they supply bushings. And a bushing is this removable thing that you can bolt into the sheave. So there are a limited number of sheave sizes, all with standard bores. And then when you want to buy one, you also buy a bushing that has the right size shaft diameter, the right size bore going through it. And that's how you adjust the diameter size. Bushings come in a couple of different styles. One is this tapered bushing. This happens to be a bushing on the shelf at, I think, Lynn Gear up in Lebanon. Another popular style is the QD bushing, which stands for quick detachable. You can see it's got a flange for handy bolting, and it's tapered for wedging in there. And it has 2 kinds of bolt holes. So one set of bolt holes is for, can we see here? Not very well. One set of bolt holes is for bolting the bushing into the sheave. The other set of bolt holes is for what they call jacking screws. And you can see in this sheave on the shop floor at Peterson, there are, what are there? I think there are 4 attachment screws and 2 jacking screws. So to get that tapered bushing out of there, it's been wedged in there, they insert 2 bolts into the jacking screw holes and push the bolts in there, and it starts to gradually pop the sheave off of the bushing. Now for installing belts, you need to have a shorter center distance. Your 2 sheaves need to be closer together than they will be when it's running, so that you can get the belts on. You can't be doing this in this picture. So you need to be able to get them close together. And then once the belts are on the sheave, then you pull them farther apart. So that means you need an adjustable center distance to allow you to have them close together for installing the belts, and then farther apart for tightening the belts once they're installed. And then as they run, these rubber belts are going to stretch, and so they have to be tightened every so often. A millwright or a technician will come along and check the tension, and will move those belt center distances farther apart. So in order to make those mountings adjustable, you can buy manufactured motor mounts, and I'll show you a couple of examples here. But honestly, almost everybody makes their own because, as you can see by looking at these, they're pretty simple. There's some formed plate with slots in them, welded together in a few places. That's it. And the slots are so there are 4 slots with bolts sticking up through them. You put the electric motor on those 4 bolts, and the holes are slotted so that you can slide the motor farther away or closer. So here's one style. Here's another style. A lot of manufacturers will make their own, as I mentioned. Here's JCI with a few styles. Some manufacturers also tighten their belts by adding a 3rd sheave, and the 3rd sheave in the middle is called an idler. Here's an example from Peterson Pacific. They found that using this idler did work, so it was effective. However, when these machines went out on the job site, those idlers caused the V-belts to wear out faster. So the last I heard, Peterson had stopped using those idlers. All right. Last 2 slides. How do you know how long to make those slots in your motor mount? How do you know how much closer your center distance needs to be, like in this picture up here, and how much farther it needs to be away to allow for tightening the belts? Well, your sheave and belt manufacturers supply tables for you. Here's an example. So we'll look at the minimum allowance below center distance for installation of belts. In other words, how much closer do you need to move the sheave in order to be able to get the belt on? We were using A belts in our last problem, and we selected a belt. What was it? Did we select an A45? I think we did. And in our previous example, we selected an A58. So either one of those would land in this particular span of numbers. All right, so an A belt in that range of length, this says we need to make the center distance 3/4 of an inch shorter in order to allow for installing the belts. So if our center distance were 16 inches, we would need to put slots in our motor mount so that the center distance could be no more than 16 minus 3/4, 15 1/4. That's how far apart we'd want them to be. And we'd probably make them closer together than that, just for good measure. Then for take-up, to stretch the belts out once we install them, and also because the belts will stretch as they are in use, and we need to be able to tighten those belts as they are stretching. So there's our same belt length range again. Our A45 and our A58 were in there. And this side of the chart says these numbers work for all sections, A, B, C, D. All right, so in that length range, according to this, we need to allow at least an extra 1.5 inches for the belt stretching out. And if I were you, I would allow more than that. I would allow, an inch for installation and 2 inches for take-up. Might as well, it doesn't hurt anything, and it gives your installer and maintenance person a little extra room just to accommodate the unknown.